My memory of him was he was the young, good-looking priest. One time we went on a ski trip. All the girls were like, whoa, look at this, and he's a priest, and, and stuff like that. Always very friendly.
There he was, and he looked very similar. And, oh, Paul, I'm so sorry to hear about this. I remember you as a boy, and I remember your parents. What we want you to do is find a psychiatrist, and we'll pay for some help for a while. I said, what ever happened to Father Birmingham? And he said, well, I don't know. He said, I know he died. He died a few years ago. I said, you don't know anything about him? And he said, well, no, we never really kept in touch. I knew they were really good friends at St. James. They used to take us to the movies together. They took us skiing together. I assumed that they probably stayed in touch. He said, the only thing I know about him, in 1971, he said, I was at Catholic Charities in Salem. I saw that on the wall, somebody had painted the words, fuck Father Birmingham. And he said, and I couldn't imagine what that was all about. And then I got a call from a parent of one of the boys at St. James. Their son had reported that Father Birmingham either had molested the son or had molested some other kids in the school. I called the pastor of St. James and reported it. He left St. James, and then I really didn't have anything more to do with him. I don't really know what happened to him. I just know he died a few years ago. And he said, I really hope that you're not going to be one of these people who's going to try and sue the church over this, because, that's really not going to be productive. That's just going to make you more angry. He just kept saying, the best thing to do is try to get some help, and we'll help you get the help, and then put this behind you. I've had dreams about Birmingham for years. Back then, the dreams were that Birmingham was alive and he was sort of a threatening figure. I'd be walking with someone I knew, and he would walk up and start talking to me. Or even more frightening scenarios. I called McCormick and I said to him, I need to know for sure that he's dead. And you're back in Boston. I wonder if you could get me a copy of his death certificate so I could just have that physical proof. And he said, oh, no, I can't do that. But I can assure you that he's dead, because I visited him in the hospital before he died, and I went to his funeral. Wait a minute, when I met you about 2 months ago, you said you had nothing to do with Birmingham after you guys left St. James. That really made me think something's going on here, and these guys aren't dealing straight. I want to get to the bottom of this.
"1994. The phone rings on a Sunday afternoon. My brother has something to tell me. I have something to tell him.
And now I'm asking you to sacrifice once again.
In the previous 3 years, I had made 3 fundraising films for the Archdiocese of Newark that helped them raise over $100 million. And even after Paul reveals to me his whole history with Birmingham and his suspicions regarding McCormick, I have another little Joe, good God, guilt moment. I mean, I'm actually happy to hear that Paul is only asking for therapy, that he doesn't want money from the church.
The funds we need are not insignificant.
From the collection basket.
How much do we need, and what exactly do we need this money for?
Because money's got nothing to do with it.
Well, we must raise $50 million.
It was just one bad priest, one parish. I head to Salem, meet up with Cousin Mario and his wife, and we jump on the Boston train to the Boston Public Library. We open one book, and within minutes, we evidently have more information about Joe Birmingham than John McCormick has. I feel my heart skip as we scan the faces of this photo. St. John's Seminary, 1960. There's smiling Joe Birmingham, and there's John B. McCormick. And this was just the beginning.
Birmingham and McCormick graduated from St. John's Seminary the same year. Birmingham went to Sudbury. McCormick came to St. James in Salem, and then about 4 years later, Birmingham shows up in Salem. They're in the same parish together for a couple of years. Birmingham goes to St. Michael's in Lowell. He was in Brighton at St. Columbkille's. Then he went to St. Anne's in Gloucester. St. Anne's was literally less than 4 blocks from where I was living. It would have shocked the hell out of me, I guess, if I'd seen him.
May they remain faithful to the Holy Church.
It turned out that McCormick He was in charge of personnel when Birmingham was sent to become pastor of St. Anne's.
The trials of this life.
He wasn't just sent to Gloucester, he was made pastor. It stands to reason that the head of ministerial personnel had to be involved in making him a pastor, or at least knew about it and didn't say to somebody, you know, back in 1971, this guy was accused of molesting kids. He's been moving from parish to parish, and maybe we ought to check and see what went on there. It seemed clear that this organization was protecting him. There was nothing exceptional about Joe Birmingham, so there were probably a lot of other priests that were being treated the same way. The whole idea of getting a large sum of money from the Archdiocese now started to sound like not such a bad idea. And it wasn't like I just wanted to get a bunch of money. I just wanted them to feel the hurt. I ended up being connected to a lawyer named Matt McNamara. He advised me there is a statute of limitations. And the start date on it is when you first recognized that this happened to you and that it had harmful effects upon you. So if you're going to do anything, we need to start acting now. On top of that, there's this statute of charitable immunities in Massachusetts that says that Catholic Church is a charitable institution. If you bring them to court, the maximum penalty that they could be assessed would be $20,000, unless you can prove that they were willingly and knowingly negligent. The quest was to find out if there was somebody who reported him before he got to Salem, and then we would know that he did nothing about it. We sent him over to Salem, and I got molested there. I got the idea to put ads in the newspapers in each of the towns where Birmingham had been stationed.
We had my sister and her husband from Oregon pay with their credit card so that it couldn't be traced back to Paul.
Just this little ad that says, "Do you remember Father Birmingham?"
And then we got the street address, thanks to you, in New York. Paul was convinced that we wouldn't hear from anybody.
This had happened to me 30 years ago at the time. It's unlikely anybody's going to contact us.
December 1994. Each day I check the mailbox. Cold, metal, empty. I'm almost relieved. The next day. Paper. Birmingham's first assignment, Sudbury. I wish Paul was here to do this.
Sudbury. Yes, I do remember Father Birmingham. If your intent is as I suspect, I can probably be of assistance to you.
It was so easy to uncover people that Birmingham had molested that I thought, man, this thing is huge.
Salem. There are several of us St. James classmates from the mid-'60s who had close contact with Father B. Could you give us some information regarding what has renewed interest in the man who had a hand in our development during junior high?
Some of them wrote letters and said,
I know Father B. What do you know about Father B?
Are you looking for what I think you're looking for?
Lowell. Who are you? What would you like to know? I remember him very well. He's been dead about 5 years. Thank God.
And then there was a guy in Gloucester.
Gloucester. Yes, I do remember Father Joseph Birmingham. He would get me out of school to counsel me in St. Anne's Rectory, his private quarters. Is this concerning what I think?
I knew this kid when he was a kid. I got in contact with a number of different people who then would turn me on to their friends.
Sudbury. Father Birmingham did attempt to molest me on more than one occasion. The two incidents I remember occurred in the rectory in, I believe, 1963. I remember the year based on the car he was driving at the time, a black 1963 Ford XL with red bucket seats. Once in the rectory, we went to his room where he began to molest me. He was interrupted by another priest.
If 30 years later you can just uncover 20, 30, 40 people like that, how many more were there? Sudbury was kind of like the gold mine. I mean, one of the first ones I remember was Steve Blanchett. I went out and I met him. He told me, yeah, you know, I was molested, my brother was molested, my other brother was molested, my friends were molested. This was the first parish he was at. This was before he got to Salem. I said, well, what happened to Birmingham? He said, well, it was kind of a mystery. He just kind of disappeared one night. We didn't know where he ended up.